I found a door inside my apartment that wasn't supposed to exist. The worst part wasn't that it was locked. The worst part was that someone was knocking from the other side. My name is Daniel, and until last year, I lived in a small apartment complex outside Denver. It wasn't a nice place, but it was cheap. And when you're 26, working a delivery job, and trying to save enough money to move somewhere better, cheap is all that matters. The building was old, built sometime in the late 1970s. 4 floors, concrete walls, thin windows, the kind of place where you could hear your neighbors arguing 3 rooms away, and someone else's footsteps always sounded like they were coming from your own hallway. My apartment was on the 3rd floor, room 317. Nothing special. 1 bedroom, small kitchen, a bathroom with a shower that never got completely hot. But after 6 months living there, I noticed something strange. My apartment was bigger than it should have been. Not by much, maybe a few feet. At first, I thought it was just the layout. Old buildings have weird designs, corners that don't make sense, walls that aren't straight. I ignored it, until the night I heard someone breathing. It was 1:46 a.m. I had just gotten home from a late delivery shift. Outside, snow was falling heavily. The kind of snow that makes the entire city feel abandoned. No cars, no voices, just wind pushing against the windows. I was sitting on my couch eating leftover pizza when I heard it. A sound coming from my bedroom wall. A quiet inhale, then an exhale. Slow, steady, like someone was standing inches away on the other side. I froze. I turned off the television. The apartment became completely silent. Then I heard it again. Breathing. I walked toward the wall. The sound stopped. I pressed my ear against the paint. Nothing. I laughed. I was tired. That was all. People hear weird things at night. Pipes, neighbors, the building settling. That's what I told myself. Then 3 seconds later, someone knocked. Not on my front door, on the wall. 3 slow knocks. Knock, knock, knock. I stepped away immediately. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I asked my neighbor across the hall about it. Her name was Maria. She was probably in her 60s and had lived there longer than anyone else. When I mentioned the knocking, her expression changed. Not confused, not surprised, afraid. You heard it? I laughed nervously. Heard what? She looked down the hallway, then quietly said, "Don't talk about that room." I smiled because I thought she was joking. She wasn't. What room? She didn't answer. She just went back inside and closed her door. That bothered me more than the knocking, because people don't react like that unless they already know something. Later that day, I checked my apartment. I measured the walls. I compared them to the building layout posted near the elevator. That's when I noticed something. My bedroom wall was thicker than it should be. Almost 4 feet thicker. There was supposed to be another apartment beside mine. But according to the floor plan, there wasn't. The space didn't exist. I called the landlord. His name was Greg. I asked him if there was a storage room beside my bedroom. He went quiet. Too quiet. Then he said, "No." I asked again, "Are you sure?" A long pause. Then, "Daniel, if you hear anything coming from that wall, ignore it." My stomach dropped. Why? He didn't answer. He just said, "I'll send maintenance tomorrow." The next day, nobody came. Or the day after. Or the day after that. A week passed. The knocking continued. Always at night. Always 3 knocks. Always between 1:40 and 2 a.m., I started recording it. I placed my phone against the wall before sleeping. Every morning, I checked the audio. Most recordings were nothing, just static. But on the 5th night, I heard something. A voice. Very faint. A man's voice. Whispering. My name. Daniel. I listened again. Same thing. Daniel. I immediately called the police. I explained everything. The officer who arrived looked annoyed at first, like he expected another noise complaint, until he heard the recording. His attitude changed. He asked, "Have you opened the wall?" "No." "Good." That was the first time anyone said something that scared me more than the actual knocking. "Why?" He looked toward my bedroom. "Because this building had an incident years ago." "What incident?" He didn't answer. Instead, he called someone. An hour later, 2 detectives arrived. They told me the building used to have a different layout. Before renovations, before the current owners. Apparently, there was an additional room beside my apartment, a small maintenance room. But 20 years ago, it was sealed, permanently. Nobody knew why. The official record said it was unused space, but the detectives had found something strange. A missing tenant, a man named Robert Miller. He lived in room 316, the apartment next to mine. He disappeared in 2003. His apartment was abandoned. His belongings were still inside. His wallet, his clothes, his car was still parked outside. But Robert was gone. The case was never solved. The detective looked at my wall. "Your apartment is where his bedroom used to be." I felt sick. "Are you saying he's behind my wall?" "No." He looked uncomfortable. "We don't know what's behind that wall." The next morning, maintenance finally arrived. They opened it. I watched from the hallway. The first thing that came out was cold air. Not normal cold, like the air had been trapped there for years. Then the flashlight went inside, and the worker stepped back. There was a room, a real room, hidden behind my bedroom wall, about the size of a small bedroom. Dust covered everything. Old furniture, a broken lamp, a mattress, and hundreds of photographs, all taken inside my apartment. My bedroom, my kitchen, my living room. Photos of me sleeping, eating, watching television. The oldest photo was dated 3 months before I moved in. I couldn't understand. Someone had been inside that hidden room while I lived there, watching me. The police searched the room. They found a notebook. Inside were dates, times, descriptions. Daniel leaves for work at 8:10. Daniel comes home tired. Daniel sleeps with headphones on. Every detail. Then I reached the final page. My hands started shaking, because the last entry wasn't about me. It was about someone else. The handwriting changed. It was messier, like someone wrote it while panicking. It said, "He found the room." Below that, "Now he knows where I was hiding." The police searched the entire building. They found no one. But they discovered something disturbing. The hidden room wasn't connected to the outside. There was no entrance, no door, no way in. The only access was through the wall they had just opened, which meant whoever had been inside was already gone before they arrived. I moved out 2 days later. I never went back. The building was eventually demolished. The official explanation was structural issues. Nobody mentioned the hidden room. Nobody mentioned the photographs. Nobody mentioned Robert Miller. I tried to forget everything. I really did. Until 6 months later, I received an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was one photograph. It was old, yellowed, taken from inside that hidden room. The picture showed my old apartment, my bedroom, my bed, and me sleeping. But there was one detail I couldn't understand. The timestamp on the photo was printed in the corner. It was taken 3 days after I moved out, and in the reflection of my bedroom window, there was someone standing behind the camera. Someone who had been watching me. Someone who should have been trapped inside that wall. Because the last thing written in the notebook wasn't a warning. It was an instruction. When he leaves, move to the next room.